Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but we were being tailed as we left the building today of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and it's why we took longer to get home. I was trying to lose them. Does that surprise you?
In the context of being in Adelaide on a whatever day it is, Thursday, it does sound a little bit surprising. I think it's more that other people just also wanted to leave the building and the city.
Oh, yeah. I think I just got the heebie-jeebies because we can't even tell you who the person was from the Australian Signals Directorate who was leading the talk there because we're sworn to secrecy. It's all top. This is Australia's defence against cyber attacks, and they're real. And every one of us, you, me, dear listener, you as well, we don't take it seriously enough. And this episode is dedicated to getting us to do that. And I hope you haven't tuned out yet. How can you scare people to listen, David? What would you say? Because this is your gift.
Yeah, well, it's do a little bit of work now or have an awful lot of misery later.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development, to realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
In the person segment for this episode, we want to look at our individual responsibilities when it comes to being safe online. And look, we can be very complacent. As we all know, the human brain likes to be in neutral as much as possible, and that means those pesky passwords or whatever, it's just so easy to say, you know what, just remember it. I don't want to put it in every time. Thank you very much. I have slowly trained myself out of that, David. Little things I have, like the little bit of software that tracks whether emails I send people have been read or not for our CRM. Every day, that prompts me to log in again. It sends me a code by SMS. My accounting software, you have to put in the authenticator code. It's a pain in the butt. But I say to myself, you know what? This is a pain in the butt, 100%. But what if certain creepy people, including some I've worked with in the past, got their mitts on this code and they got in? How would I be feeling about it then? You know what? I wouldn't begrudge this inconvenience for a second. I think that's the mindset we need.
Most definitely. Two-factor authentication is annoying the first 20 times, but by the 100th time it's normal. So the sooner you get used to the fact of, the software is going to send a code to my phone now and I'll enter that in. And that way, I can be sure I'm the only one getting into my account. There's actually a wonderful peace of mind from taking the extra 5 seconds for two-factor authentication.
And we're going to look at a couple of specific things a little bit later on, but Legends with Bevo is a podcast that looks at different sporting legends in particular, and I've worked with Bevan through our mentoring programs and as a client, and I didn't realise that he's had some issues when it comes to cybersecurity. Well, after I was working with him, I'll hasten to add. And we just heard him telling a story about his experience on the Think Cyber podcast. Jasmine, who runs that, we met also at this briefing today. And that's cyber spelled CYBR. There's no E, of course. And he was telling the story about when it dawned on him that he'd been victim of a scam.
I woke up in the morning, as you do, and I just checked my bank statements and noticed there was an unusual transaction. And it doesn't sound like a lot of money. It was only like $130, but in the scheme of things, and as it turned out, it was quite an absolute pain in the butt, because I looked at the transaction and it said something like a PayPal transaction for advertising, and I was like, well, I haven't said anything about advertising or paid for anything and asked for anything on Facebook. So what's this? And then all of a sudden I went to log into my Facebook and it'd been suspended. So I'm like, this is my personal Facebook I'm talking about. And I was like, what the heck's going on here? And then I went onto my Legends of Bevo, which is obviously linked, which is my business page, and that had also been suspended. So, and it was just one of those things where it says your account's been disabled due to inappropriate advertising. You probably know all about it, the cyber side of things. And I was thinking, what the heck's going on here? And then just doing lots of different investigating, researching, spoke to so many different people, so many different IT experts, paid thousands and thousands of dollars to get in touch with Meta, and still to this day have not been able to get it fixed. And I guess the most frustrating thing is May last year, these people, whoever they were that got into my Facebook page, started doing these really weird, inappropriate videos and sort of ruining my reputation on my page. And it was only for a short time, and they never contacted me asking for money or anything like that, Jazz. So it was a really bizarre situation. And even to now, I don't know why they did it for, whether it was just to have a bit of fun. Honestly, and it's just been nothing but frustrating. And the page is still there, over 5,000 followers. And I'm just completely helpless that I can't do anything about it. And so, it's just all that hard work. I've had the podcast for, at that stage would have been 6 years, so 7 years now in April this year. So that's a lot of hard work, over 5,000 followers that you lose. Really heartbreaking.
As Jasmine points out in that little snippet, he has this preventative mindset, this little habit of checking his bank account. I don't think all of us, I do from a business perspective because I reconcile everything that goes through our bank account. So I would see something that is untoward. It made me think, on the personal accounts, I don't pay quite as much attention. I probably should do that. What's interesting is that one of the case studies that they shared at this briefing today was about a gentleman from Sydney who clicked on a link in an email, and afterwards he just had this spidey sense that something wasn't quite right. So he looked through his emails, and there he discovered draft emails that were waiting there to be sent out in his name to people in his contact list with invoices and a message saying, just sending this invoice again, and here are the details, and it's different banking details. And he was lucky enough to be able to delete them before they got sent. He then discovered that these crooks had worked out from the link he clicked in how to sign into his inbox, and they were going to be using his reputation, riding it into the ground, and sending out emails in his name. That is very tricky, because who would normally pick that up, David?
Yeah, who goes and looks in their draft folder when they haven't written an email and want to go through it and make sure it's ready to go? The point here in both situations is people's preventive mindset was, it's a bit weird, I'll have a look. Now, in Bevan's case, it was a little bit too late. He realised after he'd seen the strange PayPal transaction on his bank statement that actually he'd got an email he thought was from Facebook. He'd treated it as if it was serious, and he had, entered his username and password, and in doing so given control of his Facebook account away. His spidey sense came up when he went back to his normal level of preventive behaviour of looking at his bank account the next day.
Well, you're dead right, and we're going to talk about some practical things we can all be mindful of in just a moment in next segment. But one thing that was brought up I didn't know existed. If ever you are in doubt and you feel like your personal identity has been stolen or compromised, there's a website you can go to that's idcare.org, idcare.org. An Australian-based company, is a not-for-profit. They do not ask for any donations. They are supported, and their job is to help you recover. This is fantastic, David.
Yeah, when you hear someone like Bevan's story where he just didn't know what to talk or who to talk to and lost days trying to work out what to do. If he'd known, just reach out to idcare.org straight away. Who could have said what he could have done, what isn't possible, what can be achieved. That's really more important to just shut everything else down, let everyone know that that account is not you anymore. He could have felt perhaps more positive about the actions he could take faster.
And the beautiful thing is they don't care if you're an individual, small business or an organisation. They're there to give you some free support to work out what a plan is going forward and how to recover from this. And they even actually hold cyber resilience outreach clinics from time to time. So I'm going to be having a good look at that site, idcare.org. I think from a personal perspective, just for us to sleep well at night, we have to understand this is real. This happens to a lot of people, more than you would think. And we actually have these tools to try and stay ahead of the curve.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
The more things change, David, the more they stay the same. Is that true?
It's absolutely remarkable. The technology can change, the clothes we're wearing can change, and people are remarkably similar.
Because during this briefing we had at the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, there was a little comment that she made towards the end when it comes to ransomware. That's where people have gone to work, they've discovered that they've been locked out of their computers, their network. Often, sadly, their backup computers and disks have been encrypted. They've been locked out of them too. And the message comes on the screen that if you want to get access again, pay whatever it could be. It could be $300, could be $1,000, could be many thousands. The advice is do not pay. And that's hard to swallow when you know that you've got your business's workings locked away from you, because that is an Armageddon kind of experience. And what's interesting to me is, as she was speaking and telling this story, I instantly thought of 1066. As you would, David. I'm sure your mind went there as well. Because if we go back to the history of England, in the lead up to 1066, where there was an Armageddon, if you like, the Normans' Armageddon, the poor Anglo-Saxons, in the lead up to that, different kings had been dealing with marauders, David. Danish, all the different Viking types, etc.
Hey, my surname's Olney. I've got a certain soft spot for those marauders.
Yes. That's why I'm sitting on the other side of the desk. So these marauders would come, and what some of the kings worked out to do is you do a special tax on people, and you would get 10,000 silver coins, whatever that is. I think the figures, that works out to millions of dollars today, and give it to the marauders to say, here, don't hurt us, take this money, go away. And it was referred to as Dane Geld. Geld, of course, being the Germanic word for money, for gold. And the thing that history teaches us is all that did was they went away and thought, you know what? That was pretty easy work. Let's get some extra tools, some extra weapons. We'll go back. We'll do it again. And so they did. This is where history can teach us and put this advice into context, David.
Absolutely. If the Vikings turned up for the 3rd time and you can't pay, they're always willing to attack you one day if they have to. So why did you give them money the first 2 times? Unless you were going to build stronger ways to respond to them in between. So this point here, if you pay the ransom, they're going to come back looking for more. And in the same way, before 1066, when the Vikings were turning up, unless you were going to fortify your town and prepare to fight next time they turn up, why would they change their marauding behaviour?
And of course, I don't always just think of 1066. I have been listening to a fantastic history podcast called The Rest is History, and they've got a series of episodes all about the year 1066. And this clip actually shows us why you don't keep paying the ransom.
No, you got to get better at security or run away. But either way, you can't just pay. It's not an option.
And in 991, Tryggvason and his fellow freebooters, a kind of great fleet of Vikings, are cornered on land at Malden in Essex, so south of East Anglia. And they're confronted by the Ealdorman of Essex, a guy called Britnorth, and the Vikings win, and Britnorth is killed.
Do you want to know a fact about that, Tom?
Yeah, tell me.
So obviously the Battle of Maldon is one of the most famous Old English poems. But you know who was obsessed with the Battle of Maldon? J.R.R. Tolkien. And the stand that Birthnot makes at the Battle of Maldon is apparently the inspiration for the stand that Gandalf makes at the Bridge of Khazad-dûm.
I did not know that.
Isn't that a good fact?
I mean, that kind of Tolkien-esque quality of glamour and magic and tragedy, it does hang over this story. And unsurprisingly, because for Tolkien, the Norman Conquest was the greatest tragedy in the history of England.
Yeah.
And he wanted to write Lord of the Rings to give the English back the mythology that he thought they had lost as a result of the conquest. Ethelred, not a kind of Tolkien-esque hero, really. He decides that the best way to deal with this crisis is to buy the Vikings off. And so he uses his state apparatus to raise £10,000 worth of taxes, which inevitably comes to be called the Danegeld, the gold that is being paid to the Danes. And equally inevitably, in 994, Olaf Tryggvason is back for more. And this time, he doesn't just hover the coast. He leads an assault directly on London. It gets beaten back. But he then goes on a kind of great ravaging raid across the heartlands of Wessex. And this, of course, is absolutely an open challenge to Ethelred. It's an attempt to shred his authority because Wessex is the heart of the entire English kingdom. And the raids just keep coming and coming. And treasure is stripped from churches. Ethelred's subjects are enslaved. And this is a hideous experience, both for men and women.
So there you go. They knew they would take the money while it's there, but they were ready to get all the silver out of that country and then come back and completely destroy it. So not good customers. We know that now about ransomware. It's the same thing that applies. And probably the first line of defense that she spoke about was we need to train ourselves and anyone working in our business basically to be suspicious. And when I think of people being schooled to be suspicious, I think David Olney. That's not a bad way to be, is it, David?
Yeah, I like people to be aware. I like people to pay attention. I would rather say be curious about the motives of anything that looks unusual, because I want to put a positive valence on it, because being curious is puzzle solving. Being curious is being interested. And I would much rather people be positively valenced towards what's going on than suspicious to the point where they see a problem everywhere.
Interesting you mentioned if you see something that just looks a little bit off. Isn't the dilemma the fact that they're looking less and less off? These phishing emails where they try to look like the real deal are actually looking pretty good.
Yeah, and particularly in my case where I've got the screen reader reading them to me. Again, I'm not seeing if the logo looks right. So if the words sound right, I'm lucky that most of the people who write these emails have terrible grammar, spelling and punctuation.
Until AI helps them.
Well, that's the point. They're getting better because of AI, not because of the person who came up with the idea of the fraudulent behaviour.
Yes. So it's not so, suspicious. So here are the three flags that they said to look out for. The first one is if you get an email or a message that's urgently requesting money, whether that's if you have children, you've got a child texting you. People fall victim to that. The common one that was talked about in this presentation was the email coming from someone you know that might say something like, "Hi, David, the last couple of invoices have bounced. I'm sending it again. Are you able to pay that today?" And what's happened, of course, this is the first time they've sent this. You think, "Oh, yeah, I do owe Steve that money," and you pay it, but it's gone to a different account. Would you do that?
I would hope I wouldn't, but I guess it depends how frazzled you are at 5 o'clock after an 8-hour day at the computer. You might just be tired enough one day to go, "Oh yeah, I mustn't have paid it," rather than to go, "Hang on, I should go look at my bank records."
So that's the first one, is to teach yourself that anything like that should trigger a fresh set of eyes to have a look. And one thing I say to anyone we're working with, or anyone we have worked with in the past, you are always welcome to forward any email like that to me, Steve at talkedaboutmarketing.com. I'm happy to run my eye over it because I can normally spot these things at 3,000 metres, some things that might get past you. Mind you, some things really test my limit. They're getting better and better these days. So that's the first one. The other one is emails or messages containing malicious links or attachments or asking for sensitive information like passwords. That should be the biggest red flag of them all. Well, even that's not right. They're all big red flags.
They are. But this thing of being asked for information, it's so common when we're inside of apps or inside of software packages. But the thing to really remember is if they can ask you inside their secure environment, or they can ask you to go inside the secure environment, why are they sending you an email and asking you to click on a link and randomly put sensitive information on a web page? You know, we only have to stop for a second and go, hang on, if that was legit, wouldn't they be asking me to log in and go to the notification section so I know it's real?
The third red flag is any emails that look that little bit off. And I guess that just means, I think she said, you know, the banks, for example, you get something from ANZZ.
ZZ, yeah.
And if you're frazzled or rushing when you do this, we're likely to miss it because the brain goes, yeah, that looks about right. We have to get that spidey sense really sharp. Basically, trust nothing, especially if it's asking you to take an action. I think that's the fair thing to say here. So I always make sure when that gets triggered, typically, it depends what your software is, but you could hover over the email address that's in the email and it will show you not the one that it's written to look like, but the real one underneath. It might look like, you know, david@anz.com, but you hover over it and it's david at gibbity-giggity.382zz.russia. That's when you know something's off kilter.
Yeah, and I'll take the line from James Pyle, a very capable intelligence interrogator, where he said, if in doubt, always ask one more question. That's all you got to do to avoid most problems.
And I get that too. Occasionally with these SMSs asking for something, I got one recently and I asked the person for something that only me and them would know. So it was a personal question and the wheels soon fell off because it was not them. It was someone who was pretending to be them. And this is the joy of being able to SMS and message and whatever, is that you can do it all times and it's easy. But it means that the ne'er-do-wells can hide behind that. So really, from the principal's perspective, I guess the lesson is technology changes, people don't. History repeats. And history sometimes has a fake email address underneath it.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
In the problem segment, I figure for this special cybersecurity episode, we should look at what are the actual actions we can do. I think most of us have had the bejesus scared out of us, as the saying goes. Let's look at what we can actually do, although we'll notice that the average cost of a cybersecurity incursion for small businesses sits around $50,000. That's very hard to come back from. In fact, they'll probably wipe out most small businesses, David.
Yeah, it's a good way to keep this in context. Either take 30 seconds to investigate or potentially be $50,000 down, because that's the average, which means there's a lot that are higher.
Yeah. Interesting, looking at the figures they had, medium-sized corporations and bigger, it was about 60,000 per incident. When you think about it, that makes the 50,000 for a small business gigantic.
Proportionally, yeah.
Yeah. So here are the, we went through the material that was sent to us, and here are some of the free and no-cost options and actions we can take. The first one, we've talked about this a lot, turn on that multi-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called two-factor authentication. Basically means that, especially for the most sensitive accounts, so that's going to be your banking, your accounting, your email, your social media accounts. I include them, even though they're frivolous at one level, they are your reputation online. It's how most people mediate. You are mediated to most people. If we've got two-factor authentication, means when you log in, yes, you have to get a text message sent to you, or you use an authenticator app like Google Authenticator, where it generates an ongoing code that changes all the time, and you plug that in, and then you get in. It is a pain in the butt, but it is nothing compared to having crooks get inside your world. Next one is update software regularly. So that means turning on those auto updates for your phones, for if you've got Windows or whatever operating system you've got, iOS. Let them look after themselves and stay up to date all the time. That to me is a no-brainer. That should be happening. You agree, David?
Absolutely. And the one I would add to that is very often to aid in software updates, restart your computer every few days. Don't leave it a month of putting it on the sleep at the end of every day and then waking it up in the morning, because in a lot of cases then it will be slower to do the updates than if you give it a restart every few days.
And on that, that's the one that surprised me today, because I will put my hand up. You know, I've got this beautiful Windows beast that I'm running, and I would leave it on for 7 days, 10, you know, and they've actually said, do not leave your computer running non-stop for more than, I think they said 48 hours. I'm going to start doing that now. In fact, I think it kills two birds with one stone. If I turned it off at night, it creates a psychological sense that we're packing up for the night.
Day's over and tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, I often do it because I've got tabs open and I don't want to have to look them up again, but that's not hard to do. There's a thing called history.
Yeah, it's there. We just have to want to use it.
So the biggest takeaway for me, because I'm doing most of these things, I'm not saying I'm squeaky clean. I will be much cleaner after this experience, but keep turning those machines off. And I think that's a little bonus, David, because that then prompts a refresh. Security software, antivirus. Richard Pascoe, the Adelaide tech guy, who's a friend of us here at Talked About Marketing, he says, look, don't worry if you're a Windows person of getting antivirus software these days. The Windows inbuilt protection that comes, your Defender that comes as part of Windows, that does the job.
Just make sure it's on. Because again, it could have got turned off at some point to install something. So just every now and then, type Defender in, open it up, and make sure it's on.
Well, that's true. The other thing is access controls. If you've got the ability to restrict users to certain accounts so that not everyone's sharing the same login, it makes it easier to track what's been happening if you do need to forensically look at things, and also giving people different levels of control. That's important. Strong passwords and passphrases. Passphrases are the new thing that's come in. She did mention make use of these password
managers.
Password managers, that's right. The one I use is Dashlane. She mentioned OnePass. There are plenty of them out there. You end up having a major password you remember to get into it, but it is where all your passwords are captured and can log in automatically for you on these places, and you can update passwords, etc. It's the smart way to go. In fact, she said, little trick, she has two. One set for one sort of things like bank, and the other one set for all the rest. So she remembers two different passwords or pass keys, and that manages what she gets up to. I think that's an interesting kink in the hose, making sure they're strong, because we want 12 characters or more for your passwords. But she said, well, the data says if you've got at least 8 characters in your passwords and you're using one of these password managers and two-factor authentication, you're doing a pretty good job. Because the job is, at some level, everything's crackable at some point. You're just trying to make yourself harder so that the crooks go elsewhere.
Yeah, it's the classic thing, unfortunately. You want your house to look just a little bit more difficult to break into than next door. You want your computer to just take a little bit too long to work out how to get into, but the next one they send the phishing email to, the next one they try and crack the password on, well, that was easy. So you're not interesting anymore. Why put effort where it's hard work? Put effort where the result is easy.
And there are plenty more. I'll put a link in the show notes to a couple of the resources they've got, but I just think on a website front, turning on this multi-factor authentication for logging into your website, it's time for that to be the case. Because again, that is the single source of truth about your business to the world. It makes sense. I'm going to have to enforce that myself, David. I make sure other people have it. I don't know that I've done it myself.
Yeah, we can't cut corners and then ask people to do things.
No. The key thing is, they're the minimal things to do to keep yourself much harder than many competitors as far as protection is concerned. There's a couple of websites, and she did say she wants us to report anything that we find that's suspicious, because that just helps this government agency keep sharp. There's the Australian Cybersecurity Hotline, which is 1300 Cyber 1, and I'll put the link in the show notes so you can find that, and also cyber.gov.au. Again, the link's in the show notes. It's worth it. It's worth having a look. They've got a little kit you can download to check the things, but this podcast has covered the most important things to look out for. But there's probably a couple of little contacts that are worth having up your sleeve, dare I say it, favorited and bookmarked on your computer.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4. Perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
Terrorism has changed the world, and Australia is not immune. But the way of life that we value so highly must go on. Australians are friendly, decent, democratic people. And we're going to stay that way. Our security agencies have been upgraded and are ready to detect, prevent, and respond to terrorism. All of us can play a part by keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. Over the coming weeks, the Commonwealth Government will be providing you with more information on how we can work together to protect our way of life. Be alert, but not alarmed. Together, let's look out for Australia. If you see something suspicious, call 1800 123 400.
Authorised by the Commonwealth Government, Canberra.
David, as we start this perspicacity segment, how are you? Are you alert?
I'm always alert. Can't help it.
Are you alarmed?
Nah, it's a waste of space.
Well, this ad dates back to about 2002. It was after the Bali bombings. The Australian government took this action because people became... We had 9/11, not that much earlier, and I think, to be fair, many of us were a bit rattled.
I think the world was pretty jumpy after the Bali bombings happened. Very much Australia was suddenly at the centre of big events that were meant to happen other places.
And I guess you could describe this ad that we just listened to as an attempt to have a calming hand placed upon our collective shoulder to say, you know what, it's all right, stay alert, but we're going to get through this. Is that what it was? I think that's what it was trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because the whole message of be alert but not alarmed, I think, was really good. But having not heard the ad for probably 20 years, it now sounds fairly stale, male and pale. I think the format of the ad is not great, but the message I still really like because be alert has a positive valence. Being alert is not going somewhere negative. It's not being suspicious. It's not being paranoid. It's not mistrusting other people. It's just be alert to anything that is odd. And if it's odd, pay a little bit more attention and decide if it's something you need to take action on.
It does, listening back to it now, it does sound like that old lady across the road from you. You look over and the Venetian blinds quickly close because she's been watching you. I also picture John Howard in his flannelette PJs and his dressing gown and slippers being relaxed and comfortable and wanting the world to stay that way. This is the world they were painting as being the normal world and that we're at risk and we're going to, look after ourselves. I don't think we could paint ourselves in that same picture today because it was a bit twee, a bit patronising.
Yeah.
I think there's more nuance to our life. I think we'd have to approach it from a different way. And maybe it's like they fluffed around the edges. Maybe we need to be more direct in the way we would talk about it these days. Hey, come on, this is real. They're going to be groups. And they win by having maximum impact. And our job is to thwart them as best we can. And there are little telltale things. Don't feel shamed. Don't feel embarrassed. Let us know. We'd much rather have a million messages that turn out to be nothing than miss something.
Yeah, I think that's a key difference between 2002 and now, is in 2002, the threat was to conceivably all of us or any of us. So it was a very broad message, whereas now cyber is normally going to affect individuals one at a time or organisations one at a time, and in the main, we won't know that someone got ransomware and paid $50,000. We won't know that someone got sent an email with the wrong banking details because someone hacked their email and paid $50,000. Most of us won't know how prevalent this is. So in a sense, the interesting contrast now is terrorism was very rare. Basically cyber attacks are every day and everywhere. So being alert is even more important now because you are more likely to be affected now by some sort of cyber attack.
But here's the rub. Yes, they were rare, and they still are to some degree, but when they happen, we all know about it. These things are happening more often, but for shame, often, embarrassment, people don't talk about it. And so I wonder if our ability to put our hands over our eyes and to think it's not going to happen to me is more robust now than it was back then.
Well, we're so distracted now by so much information from so many sources. Who wants to listen to the boring, sensible message?
Sorry, David, you were saying something? Yeah. How do we get this message out?
I think we just keep trying. The fact that we got an invitation to go to this cybersecurity briefing is great. That they are reaching out and talking to as many people as possible. We mentor people, we help people. We might be the people who can help them take their cybersecurity seriously because they won't listen to the broader message. But when we are helping them with their website or their marketing or their business development, or we're doing executive coaching to help them plan for growth, we're the ones who can say, yeah, but you're going to do all this growth. That's great. But what have you done to secure your cyber environment? What if you do all this growth and then get a ransomware attack? What if you do all this growth and then someone breaks into your email? There are so many things that can undo your good efforts. So if we can help people to just take that few minutes a day, and that's all it takes to be as secure as you can be, then that's not so hard to do.
So we're going to agree that ad just wouldn't work today. So it's not something that you'd run again. You'd have to rethink that communication strategy. Part of it, interestingly enough, Jasmine from the Think Cyber podcast had mentioned to us that she thinks fictionalizing or personalizing the story through true crime could be a way of getting in front of some people, but not all people.
And again, it really aligns very well with what we do, and that is use the story brand mechanism to lay things out with heroes and stories and problems and guides. And again, we sat through a very useful presentation this morning, done in, not a super technical way, but it could have had a lot more storytelling. Mm-hmm. They could have positioned themselves better as the guide. They could have positioned the people they help better as heroes. And it would be easier to get engagement if you talk to people in the way they enjoy and understand. So it was a good lesson this morning in the power of communications. Such an important message. But as we said in the car, we could immediately help rewrite the message and probably make it more consumable.
David, ito bilo okin polezno.
Udavas deviam Stephen.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.